Perfect.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 29 of the
29?
Bright Lights Podcast. I'm your host, Deeks, joined as always by my two wonderful co-hosts, Mahoney
Saw.
and PT.
What's up?
Gentlemen, it is the eve of quite possibly the most exciting time in the NFL offseason.
Possibly
NFL
better than
draft.
Christmas.
No.
How excited are you two to watch the draft tomorrow, despite the fact that the Bears don't have a first-round pick?
Still very excited. A lot of controversy with the number one pick.
Yeah, with the Bears not having that first round pick, it's always a disappointment. But in the past, the Bears have not strongly picked in the first round, so that could work to our advantage. And if you think about it, our first round pick is Khalil Mack. So
it is.
I'm pretty happy about it. All right.
So, a few weeks ago, we did our first mock draft, our 1.0, before the NFL Combine. Now, we're the day before the NFL Draft. Actually, this will probably come out the day of the NFL Draft. We're giving
Yes, it will.
our post-Combine 2.0 NFL mock draft. The way we're going to do this is we're all going to give, for each pick, we're all going to give you guys who we had in the 1.0 and then who we have in the 2.0. If it's the same pick, we'll explain why we think they're going there. If it's different, we'll also give you reasons why. Before we get into this, just make sure you follow us on Twitter at BrightLightsPod, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all the fun stuff. Sports Regime, top left corner, you hit podcast, scroll down, and we're good from there. You'll see us there. But again, I always hate wasting your time and our time. So PT, get it going, baby.
Yeah, as Mahoney had touched on earlier, this first pick has had much controversy circling it. There's many different outputs that could come from this. The Cardinals could trade away and get more draft picks. They could draft Kyler Murray. They can't, or they're going to keep the pick. So my head's been spinning for sure. And I originally never thought that Kyler Murray could go here. I never thought that they would, I hate to say be stupid enough to do it, but I changed my mind. And with all I've been reading, it's all been Kyler Murray number one. And that's who I'm going with. I originally had Nick Bosa going there, but I now have Kyler Murray going there at quarterback Oklahoma. It just seems too good of a fit, and I don't know, just something in my gut's telling me this is going to happen.
So I didn't know I was going second, but I guess I'll take over right here. In my 1.0, I had the Arizona Cardinals taking Nick Bosa. In my 2.0, I also have the Arizona Cardinals taking Nick Bosa. I don't know. I don't think they're going to take Murray number one. I think that's just a fluff. I think that if they were going to trade Josh Rosen, they probably would have already traded him. So Nick Bosa, I think he's the best player in this draft class, edge rusher out of Ohio State, and I have him going with the number one overall pick. If it's a need, too. You put him right next to Chandler Jones, that's a pretty good pass rush going forward.
Yeah, so just like Deegs was saying earlier, we decided to put a little twist to this and put some trades in there.
Oh, here we go. Oh, yeah. I saw you smiling over there. I'm like, he's about to drop something.
Yep. With the first pick, the Oakland Raiders, I have them sending two of their first-round picks and a second-rounder to Arizona for the number one. And they have a need at quarterback, and they're going to take Kyler Murray.
Okay.
Very ballsy,
Nice.
but hey, my March Madness ended up well with all my ballsy takes. Ballsy take for tomorrow.
I like it. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It definitely could shake up the draft in many different ways. It's got to be something that's going to definitely shock a lot of people, I think. Now we'll move on to the second pick, the 49ers. They've been drafting a lot of defensive players recently, and I believe that they're going to stick with that. You got, with me taking Murray going first, that leaves Bosa still on the board, and you got to take Bosa second, in my opinion. So he's going to be going out to San Fran, and I think he'll definitely fill a couple holes and line up across from Buckner. That'll be fun to watch too. So, and I had originally Josh Allen going there, but he's basically the same thing. But I think Nick Bosa's better. So, yep.
In my 1.0 to the 49ers, I had them taking Quinnen Williams out of Alabama. I'm going to keep the same pick there at number 2 this year. In my 2.0, taking Quinnen Williams. Had a really good combine. super athletic for how big of a guy he is. Like you mentioned, PT, they've drafted a lot of interior linemen, and I think you put this guy right next to the big guys, their first round talent that they have. That's probably one of the best defensive lines of football. So they're going to keep their defensive train going. Obviously, if Murray goes number one, then Bosa falls into their lap. They'll take him. But with Bosa off the board, in my mock draft, I have them going Quinnen Williams out of Alabama.
Yeah, so I have the 49ers taking Nick Bosa. In the first one, I have them taking Josh Allen, but they need an edge rusher, and just Nick Bosa is still on the board. You can't pass him up no matter what.
Yeah, like I said earlier, this draft is going to be purely shaped on how this first pick is occurred. We'll move on to the third with the Jets. Here's another thing: the Jets need help on that defensive line. The next best player up is Quinnen Williams. This guy is a straight monster. He's definitely some guy that you don't want to leave sitting there. And I think the Jets just can't pass on him. He's just too good. And I actually had him in my first draft too, so he's going to stay there.
Yeah, so I had the Jets taking Josh Allen in my 1.0. I have a different pick in my 2.0 because PT just texted me Deeks 1.0 equals Deeks 2.0. So I'm going to spice it up right here. I have a team that has emerged as a team as of yesterday, with reports coming out that they want to trade up into the top 5. I have the Washington Redskins trading up to number 3 with the New York Jets and drafting Kyler Murray out of Oklahoma to be their quarterback of the future.
Oh, yeah. I actually have the exact same thing. I have the Jets and the Redskins doing a little trade action. But the Redskins are not obviously going to take Kyler Murray because he's the first pick. But I have them taking Dwayne Haskins from Ohio State.
Okay.
Nice, dude.
Yeah, 2 quarterbacks gone out of the top 5.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting.
It'll be very interesting.
2 big trades. I think that happens, that'll definitely stir some stuff up. Moving on to the 4th pick. I still have the Raiders in that 4th spot. Losing Khalil Mack obviously hurt them last year. They didn't have the same pass rush, obviously. So I have them drafting Brian Burns, edge rusher out of Florida State. He's just another guy that could definitely possibly fill and help out the Raiders' defensive line.
Yeah, in my 1.0, I had the Oakland Raiders taking DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss, wide receiver. Surprisingly, after the incredible combine that he put up, I had him drop a little bit in the draft. With Bosa and Williams gone, I think the next best defensive player is Josh Allen. So that's who I have them taking. If Kyler falls to here, for some reason the Jets take Josh Allen at 3 and Bosa and Williams go 1 and 2, and Kyler drops to 4, I could definitely see Oakland taking him. In my scenario, obviously Kyler Murray just got taken by the Redskins, so I have them taking a guy that fits their need. The Raiders were last in the NFL last year in sacks, and this guy comes in right away. Had 17.5 sacks in college last year. He can drop back in coverage. So I have outside linebacker Josh Allen out of Kentucky going to the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, so since I had that the first trade with the Cardinals and the Raiders, therefore this pick now goes to the Cardinals. I have them taking Quinnen Williams, defensive line from Alabama. Cardinals need defense. They really need anything and everything at this point. So, Quinnen Williams, DL, Alabama.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Moving on to number 5, the Buccaneers. The defense has been struggling. It's this is a really strong defensive draft. And it's kind of obvious with these top picks, they need defensive players. With that being said, I think Devin Bush from a linebacker from Michigan can definitely step in and help them out quite a bit. So I have Devin Bush.
Yeah, in my 1.0, I had the Bucs taking Greedy Williams just because at that point, before the combine, I thought he was the best cornerback in the class. I still think he is, but I just feel like Tampa Bay, after losing Quan Alexander, is going to address linebacker. I have them taking Devin White out of LSU. I don't think he's the best linebacker in the draft class. I think Devin Bush is the best linebacker in this class. But the upside is obviously greater with Devin White. And Tampa Bay is in love with this guy. They brought him in for several meetings. Reports are coming out that this is their guy. So realistically speaking, I think that is who they will take. So Devin White, linebacker out of LSU, is my pick.
I have the good old Buckaroos taking Montez Sweat, my boy, an edge from Mississippi State.
Interesting. All right, moving on to the sixth pick. This is the Giants. This also has some interesting speculation around it. What are they going to do with their quarterback situation? And I had them originally taking Dwayne Haskins early, but I actually have moved away from that, and I've actually put them drafting Ed Oliver, defensive tackle out of Houston.
Interesting.
I have the Giants in my first one. I have the Giants taking Dwayne Haskins, quarterback. I don't think they'll address that yet. The Giants have 2 first-round picks now, so later on we'll find out who I think they'll take with their second first-round pick. I think they'll go edge rusher here just because their GM has come out and said that they want to address that need and fix up that defensive line. So I have them taking Montez Sweat out of Mississippi State. Dude had a phenomenal combine, probably the most impressive combine I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, he climbed a lot. He did.
Yeah. So that skyrocketed his draft stock a ton, and that's where I have him going, right there at 6 to the Giants.
So in 1.0, I had Dwayne Haskins going to the Giants, but now I still have them fixing that quarterback need early in the first round, even though they did get that second first-round pick. I have them taking Drew Lock, quarterback out of Mizzou.
Interesting.
You're big on the quarterbacks this year, dude.
Three out of the top 10.
But then after that, I really don't have any quarterbacks. So
because they're all gone.
Yeah.
They're all gone.
They're all gone. You've been right on some pretty ballsy picks recently, so I'm not gonna count you out. We'll move on to the 7th pick. We got the Jacksonville Jaguars. I originally had them drafting Drew Lock with the Jags now getting Nick Foles. I have them now picking T.J. Hawkinson, tight end out of Iowa. I think he'll be a huge tight end and big threat down the field for him, definitely moving on.
Yeah, my 1.0 had them taking a quarterback. I had them taking Kyler Murray. That obviously will not be the case now that they just signed Nick Foles to like a 4-year contract. So I have them going offensive weapon. Not T.J. Hawkinson. He'll come off the board in a little bit here for me. I have him going DK Metcalf, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. The Jaguars really don't have any solid wide receivers. Their best wide receiver last year got injured in Marquise Lee. I think Metcalf gives them a really solid deep threat going forward. Obviously, we saw what he did at the Combine. He's a physical specimen, and I think you give Nick Foles a guy like that, kind of like an Alshon Jeffrey, where you can just throw it up in the air and see what happens. He'll probably benefit from that. So I have them going with DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss.
So I had the Jags in the first, taking Drew Lock, quarterback out of Mizzou. But now, since they did just sign Foles, I have them taking Jonah Williams, offensive lineman from Alabama.
Okay. Yeah, he's definitely a high offensive lineman on that. I definitely could see him pretty early. Now, with the 8th pick, this is the Lions pick, and I originally had them trading with the Dolphins, but I scratched that. I had Kyler Murray going to the Dolphins, but like I said, I scratched that. This is going to be the Lions pick, 8th pick. I have them going Josh Allen, edge, out of Kentucky. I think he definitely could step up and definitely change the culture in Detroit and really help out Matt Patricia in that aspect.
Okay, so my 1.0, I had the Lions taking Rashawn Gary out of Michigan. I have them also in my 2.0 taking Rashawn Gary out of Michigan. He's again, local kid, keep him local. That's always a plus. He's a physical specimen, had a pretty good combine. And this guy, the only real thing he needs is solid coaching. And Matt Patricia's a defensive genius, so he's going into a system where he's going to develop well, and I think he's a day one starter for them. They're losing Ziggy Ansah. I don't quite think he's the same player as Ziggy Ansah, but I mean, you get a guy like this on your defensive line to develop and groom under one of the best head coaches in football, you'll be fine. So I have them taking Rashawn Gary.
I have the Lions taking Brian Burns, edge from Florida State. I also had him as that way in the first mock draft. He's just strong in his position and has the potential to get stronger.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on to the 9th pick with the Buffalo Bills. At 1.0, I had Jonah Williams, offensive tackle from Alabama, being drafted. I had that the same way. They needed protection for their young quarterback, and I believe that he could definitely help that out a lot.
Yeah, I have the same pick as you. I had Jonah Williams in my 1.0. I got him going in my 2.0. If Josh Allen is your franchise quarterback, got to keep him upright. He had to scramble a lot, run out of the pocket a ton last year. So, Jonah Williams out of Alabama.
So in my first mock draft, I had Cody Ford, offensive tackle from Oklahoma. Now I have them taking Andre Dillard, offensive lineman from Washington State. Again, they just need a young offensive lineman to protect the young Josh Allen.
Yeah. Moving on to number 10 with the Broncos. I originally had them drafting Brian Murphy out of Washington, cornerback. But I kind of switched it up. I think that they're actually going to go for a linebacker now with Devin White out of LSU. I think that he definitely will add some interior help that they definitely need. And Fangio is definitely going to like that as well. He loves his linebackers.
Definitely.
I had them going Byron Murphy too out of Washington in my 1.0. In my 2.0, I have them addressing quarterback. They did acquire Joe Flacco this offseason. He's a stopgap, in my opinion. It pisses me off that John Elway is still drafting for teams, but he's gonna look at this guy and fall in love because he's pretty much the prototypical John Elway quarterback, a big guy that can chuck the ball down the field. I got him taking Drew Lock. Not the best quarterback in this draft class. Definitely has the best arm. Elway's going to fall in love with that ability to throw the ball down the field, and I think Lock at Denver. I'm pretty solid about Drew Lock going to Denver, so that's where I have him going.
Yeah, I feel that the Broncos are still going to address their defense in the first round. It's already strong. Why not even make it stronger? In the first mock draft, I had them taking Byron Murphy, cornerback out of Washington, just like you guys. None of them still sticking with a cornerback, but going with Greedy Williams from LSU, who had a very strong combine.
Moving on to the 11th pick with the Cincinnati Bengals. Originally, I had them drafting Cody Gary, offensive tackle out of Oklahoma, but I had them switching sides and going to defensive tackle Rashawn Gary out of Michigan. You can't go wrong with that kid at this time in the draft, so I think that they would definitely be a steal at this time.
Definitely.
In my 1.0, I had the Bengals taking Devin White out of LSU. He's gone. I have him going at 5 in my 2.0. So I'm gonna have them take Ed Oliver here. That's already a really solid defensive line with Geno Atkins right in the middle of it. You put Geno Atkins and Ed Oliver together, that's probably the best defensive line duo in the NFL. Probably day one. Ed Oliver is an absolute monster. He's a very underrated player. He can play defensive line. He can drop back into coverage. He's good in the run. He's good in pass rush. If there's any player in this draft that has the potential to be Aaron Donald-esque and have the Aaron Donald effect that obviously Aaron Donald has, it's Ed Oliver. The upside threat right there is tremendous. The floor is pretty high too. He's a serviceable starter in the NFL at best, and if not, if he reaches his ceiling, he's a superstar. So that's who I have them taken at number 11.
Yeah, so Juwan Taylor was my first pick in the mock draft before this. Now I have them taking Cody Ford, an offensive lineman from Oklahoma. Just keeping Bengals need time to throw, and they need time to throw.
I gotcha. That's an important aspect of the game. I feel you. With the 12th pick, the Cheeseheads, I had them originally picking Celine Farrell. I believe, is that how you pronounce it? Cullen Farrell out of Clemson. But I actually switched it up, and the Packers really need something for Aaron Rodgers. They need a big target, and I think Noah Fant, from tight end from Iowa, will just do that. He really needs Aaron Rodgers makes really good wide receivers and offensive weapons. I feel like this guy could definitely fit well with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I had him taking Clelin Ferrell in the first round in my first mock draft. In my second mock draft, I got to take T.J. Hockenson, tight end out of Iowa. The Jimmy Graham signing really isn't turning out too well for Green Bay. Nope. And at this point, I think that it's either, for me, if Metcalf falls, they'll take him, obviously. Yeah. But if they're picking between a tight end, which is a legitimate need for this team offensively, it's between Fant and Hockenson. At this point, it just comes down to who you think is better. I like Hockenson as an overall tight end more. He can run block, he can pass block, he can catch the football. He might not be as good of an athlete as Noah Fant is, but if you're looking at a guy who has the potential to be what Rob Gronkowski once was, this is it right here. T.J. Hockenson is a complete tight end. He's a monster. He was an All-American last year, and I think Green Bay is getting a really solid offensive weapon with him at number 12.
Yeah, number 12 with the Packers. They just need to improve their defense. That defense was not too good last year, and it ended up hurting their playoff chances. They need to address it. In the first mock draft, I had them taking Clelin Ferrell, defensive end from Clemson. Now I have them taking Brian Burns, edge from FSU, who actually I had originally in the top 10. So it's a good steal for the Packers to help their defense out.
Yeah, with 13 pick, the Dolphins. I originally had them trading with the Lions. The Lions having this pick, picking Rashawn Gary, but who really cares because it's not how it is now for me. So I actually had them going with Cody Ford, offensive line out of Oklahoma. This guy's a monster, and at this point in the draft, for this size and this nimbleness that he presents, is a steal for them. So I feel like they can't pass up on that.
My first mock draft, I had the Dolphins getting the steal, taking Ed Oliver at 13. He's gone in this one, so I have them taking Dwayne Haskins, quarterback out of Ohio State. Some might think it's a little bit surprising that he dropped this far. I think Haskins is probably the safest out of all the quarterbacks in this draft.
Agreed.
You know what he is. He can throw the football effectively. I think at his absolute worst, he's probably a really good backup with a decent starter upside. His ceiling, to me, is top 10 quarterback in the league. So if you're going to take that guy at 13, might as well take him. I don't think there's a better option here. All the guys I have underneath this pick are on my big board are below him. So, yeah, Dwayne Haskins, quarterback out of Ohio State, is my pick.
In the first mock draft, I had them taking the big dog, Kyler Murray. They need a quarterback, and I'm going to stick with that. Stick with my quarterbacks this draft. It's going to be an early and a lot of quarterbacks this year. This is my last quarterback, by the way. So I have, four in the top 13?
In the top 13.
I have Daniel Jones from Duke.
So
good for you, man.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if there goes 4 quarterbacks in the top 13, I feel like the world's gonna end.
I feel like I might explode, dude.
Yeah.
I will be
with how shitty this quarterback class is. Yeah, I might explode.
Yeah.
But teams are kind of thirsty now too. So you never know.
They need that water, dog.
All right, moving on to the 14th pick, the Atlanta Falcons. I originally had them drafting Dalton Risner, offensive line out of Kansas State, but I decided to switch up and go to the defensive line. Christian Wilkinson. This kid was not far behind Quinnen Williamson, but he's right there. I definitely feel like he could be a steal at this point, and he's basically, he's really. I've heard that he's really close to Quinnen Williams, so this could be a steal at this point in the draft as well.
I had the Falcons taking Ja'Kai Polite in my first mock draft. He had a god-awful combine and an even worse interview process, so I think despite the fact that he's probably a first-round talent, he's probably going to fall out of the first round in my opinion. So now I have them addressing their secondary, which really other than Desmond Trufant at corner is pretty weak. I got him going Byron Murphy, the first cornerback off the board. I don't think he's the best cornerback in this draft class, but I think his intangibles, his speed, his vertical ability, and just his coverage ability in general will get him taken first. We'll make him the first cornerback taken in this draft class. So that's where I have the Falcons going. Is Byron Murphy out of Washington.
Yeah, so in the first mock draft, I said they need better in pass protection. I'm going to say it again. They do need to get better in pass protection. I had them taking Dalton Risner, offensive lineman from Kansas State. I now have them taking Garrett Bradbury, offensive line from NC State. Mitchie Tribs, I love you, dog. NC State.
He went to North Carolina, you dumbass.
That was Carlos Rodon that went to NC State. Fuck.
Who?
Carlos Rodon.
So you got a pitcher for a shitty below 500 baseball team and the franchise quarterback of your favorite football team that just made the playoffs mixed up.
Pretty much, yeah.
Alrighty.
PT, just say the pick.
Moving on to the 15th pick in our draft. A lot of people have been talking about how the Redskins would be willing to move into the top 5. I just don't see it happening. I also have everyone was possibly talking about how Dwayne Haskins could be the first quarterback off. I have him falling quite a bit, but this is where he gets taken off. The Redskins obviously need a quarterback with Alex Smith's future up in the air. So I have the Redskins. I originally had them drafting Daniel Jones, quarterback out of Duke, but with Dwayne Haskins falling all the way down here, you got to take Dwayne Haskins over Daniel Jones. So there you go.
Yeah, so in my 1.0, I had the Redskins taking Drew Lock out of Mizzou. Obviously, I had them take Kyler Murray in this one. So this pick belongs to the Jets in my mock draft. And I think if this pans out and this guy falls into the Jets' lap, with what they'll get from trading down from number 3, they'll probably win the draft. I have them taking Brian Burns out of Florida State. If this was any other draft, this guy would be a top 5 pick, probably a top 3 pick. There were some concerns about his weight going into the combine. He bulked up. I think he's weighing it at about 260 now. And it's not affecting his athleticism whatsoever. He's super quick off the line. He's a traditional pass rusher, whereas I think if they stayed at 3, they would have gotten Josh Allen, who fits that 3-4 scheme really well because he can drop back into coverage. I think with the draft capital that you get from trading down and Brian Burns being your quote unquote consolation prize, he's still an elite pass rusher in my opinion. Again, a top 5 talent. Probably even a top 5 talent in this draft, just is going to fall down because of the names that are going to go above him. But this is going to be if he falls into their lap and this trade happens, the Jets are going to win this draft by a mile.
Yeah, so with the Redskins having that pick in the first mock draft, but in the second one I have them trading early to get in that top 5. I had them trading with the Jets, and I now have the Jets taking bad boy Dexter Lawrence from Clemson.
Interesting. All right, moving on to the 16th pick, the Carolina Panthers. First of all, I had them originally drafting Montez Sweat, edge rusher out of Mississippi State. But there's been a lot of concern about his injury past. I think something with his neck or something.
His heart.
Heart. And, and I hate to see this happen, but I have him not even in my first round. People are really concerned about injuries nowadays, and the heart is one of the most. I mean, to play football, sure. I personally hate to see it. I really don't even like it because he's an amazing player. With that being said, they don't take him anymore, and they take Dalton Risner, offensive line, out of Kansas State.
Yeah, so I had the Panthers taking Deontay Thompson, safety out of Alabama. He's going to drop a little bit in my mock draft 2.0 because of a pretty poor combine and an interview process. So I have them taking Clelin Ferrell out of Clemson. Keep the Clemson kid local. The Panthers don't play too far away from where Clemson plays. He's a very good football player in my opinion. Again, another guy that if this was another draft, he'd probably be a top 10, maybe even top 5 pick. That's just how good this draft class is. Was an absolute beast at Clemson. Was the heart and soul of that defensive line, a 4-year player for them. And yeah, dude, I mean, anytime you get the best player on probably the best defensive line in college football at pick 16, that's pretty solid.
Yeah, so I said in the first mock draft that they need an edge after Peppers retiring and Addison getting older. Rashawn Gary from Michigan definitely fits that need. He's from Michigan. He's going to do well in the NFL. Okay. He's going to do well.
All right, now with the 17th pick, this was originally the Cleveland Browns pick until this whole OBJ trade went down. This is now the Giants pick. Originally I had DK Metcalf going to the Browns, but who cares anymore? This is the Giants pick. Now that the Giants I didn't have them drafting a quarterback right away just to get the best player available. I have them now going with a quarterback, and I believe a very solid quarterback in Drew Lock, quarterback out of Mizzou.
Yeah, so obviously the Browns had this pick before they traded for OBJ. I had them taking Dexter Lawrence. Now with this being the Giants pick, I have them taking Daniel Jones out of Duke. A report came out today from a few sources that David Gettleman, the Giants GM, is locked and loaded on Daniel Jones. He says that that's their guy. There's reports saying that they might even take him at 6, which I think would be a colossal mistake. But they do have 2 first-round picks, and I could definitely see him being available here. So with the 17th pick, they take a pro-ready quarterback in Daniel Jones out of Duke.
I have them taking a pro-ready wide receiver in DK Metcalf. I also had him in the same pick with the Browns in the first mock draft. Because, after getting rid of OBJ, you're going to need to fix that, aren't you? So DK Metcalf, would fit perfectly in that Giants organization.
All right. Moving on to the 18th pick, we have the Minnesota Vikings. On my first draft, I had them drafting Jawan Taylor, offensive tackle of Florida, but I wasn't too sure about that. I'm not really feeling it. I'm going to say that they're going to still stay on the offensive line. They're actually going to draft Garrett Bradbury, center out of NC State. I feel like he actually rose pretty quick, and I feel like they definitely will go. They definitely need offensive line. It's just who they're going to pick, and I believe they'll go with Bradbury.
Yeah, I mean, if Minnesota doesn't address their offensive line, then someone needs to get fired. You give Kirk Cousins an insanely overpaid contract. You can't afford for him to die every single time he goes out there on the football field. In my first mock draft, I had him taking Jawan Taylor, who I personally believe is the best tackle in this draft class. He's right there again with only one tackle going above him in my draft, Jonah Williams. So yeah, I have the Vikings taking Jawan Taylor out of Florida. He's big, he's athletic, he moves quick, his technique is solid, and I think that would be an instant starter for them if he falls to pick number 18.
Just as PT said a couple minutes ago, the Vikings have an awful offensive line, and it needs addressing. In the first mock draft, I had them taking Chris Lindstrom, offensive lineman out of Boston College. And I again have them taking Chris Lindstrom, offensive line from Boston College.
Yeah, I mean, like they said, if this doesn't get, I think this is pretty unanimous that they need to get an offensive lineman. Just who it would be, I guess we'll see who falls to them. Moving on to number 19, the Tennessee Titans. I feel like they definitely need to address the wide receiver position. I originally had them going with Marquise Brown, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. But I feel like this is they are gonna DK Metcalf's gonna fall to them. I feel like they got to go over him. DK Metcalf had a phenomenal combine, and he's just too good to pass up on.
Yeah, so in my first mock draft, I had the Tennessee Titans taking T.J. Hawkinson out of Iowa. Obviously, their big position of need on the offense right here is going to be tight end. Delaney Walker gets hurt every year. He's super old. And Jonnu Smith probably isn't a starting tight end in the National Football League moving forward. So obviously, in my mock draft here, I have Hawkinson gone. So they'll have to settle for the second best tight end in this draft class. And in the country, Hawkinson's teammate Noah Fant, a beast at the combine, ran like a 4.5 140-yard dash, which is incredible for a tight end. He's a freak athlete. He's basically what Evan Engram is, but I think better. So I have them taking Noah Fant out of Iowa here at pick number 19.
Yeah, I had Marquise Brown, wide receiver from Oklahoma, going to the Titans in my first draft. And again, I have Marquise Brown going there. He can move. He runs really fast. He'd be a weapon for Marcus Mariota.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to pick number 20, the Deague Steelers. So originally, I had Greedy Williams, cornerback. He's a bad man. And you know what? He's gonna. I have him still going into Pittsburgh. I think that he'll be explosive and definitely add a spark, kind of like Jamal Adams did for that Jets defense. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes, but I definitely think that the Steelers could grab him, and he would definitely have a huge impact.
Yeah, in my first mock draft, I had the Steelers taking DeAndre Baker out of Georgia. They signed Steve Nelson this offseason from the Kansas City Chiefs, who is going to start for them day one with alongside Joe Hayden. So while in my mock draft, spoiler alert, not that anybody cares, but I have Greedy Williams still on the board here. I think it's going to be either Greedy Williams or the guy that I have them taking. I'm cool with both, to be honest with you. That they both fit needs. But I just think that Devin Bush out of Michigan is way too good of a football player to pass on. At number 20, he has the instincts. PT has him going 5th overall. That's how good of a player he is. He has the instincts. He's played the position for a very long time. He's a hell of an athlete. The lateral speed's there. I think this guy could be their middle linebacker and the captain of their defense day one, like legitimately. So I have them going Devin Bush out of Michigan. Again, Greedy Williams could easily be the pick here, a long, lanky corner, but I just think that Bush fits a better need than Williams would.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Deegs. In the first mock draft, I had them taking Montez Sweat. But now I have them taking Devin Bush, linebacker out of Michigan.
Yeah. Moving on to 21, the Seahawks. If you guys didn't realize, they just traded away their defensive line, Frank Clark, and he was a monster. And this is why I chose Clelin Ferrell, D-end out of Clemson. I originally had them choosing Devin White, but I had him going earlier, and with them losing Frank Clark, I definitely think that Ferrell could step in right away and fill his shoes immediately.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with them trading away Clark and getting a first-round pick for it, I'm sure that they'll address edge rusher with one of these two first-round picks. In my first mock draft, I had them taking Brian Burns, who at this point, obviously without Clark, would be a pipe dream for the Seahawks. He would be a day-one starter for them. Obviously, for me, Burns is gone, and I think they'll address a pretty weak secondary here with Greedy Williams, cornerback out of LSU. He's your prototypical Seahawks corner. He's like 6'2", 6'3". He's long. He's lanky. He's basically he's not as good as Richard Sherman was coming out of college, but if there's a guy to be a prototype of Richard Sherman, this is the guy right here. I think he comes in and starts day one for the Seahawks. Could be the best corner of this draft. I have him as my number one corner, and I think if he really hits his ceiling, he might be one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. Just lockdown stuff, great ball skills, reads the quarterback's eyes well. So yeah, good pick for the Seahawks here at number 21.
Yeah, I have the Seahawks. They need an edge, so I have them taking Clelin Ferrell out of Clemson.
Yeah, I definitely think that we both have the same pick. I think he'll have a huge impact if he goes to Seattle. Moving on to the 22nd pick, Baltimore Ravens. I think that they need to address the wide receiver position again. I originally had them picking Kelvin Harmon, wide receiver out of NC State, but I have Marquise Brown falling down to them. I believe that Brown is a better fit for the Ravens. He's quick, he's speedy. And he's really good with that screen game. I feel like that really fits with the Ravens pretty well.
I want to preface this by saying fuck the Baltimore Ravens and all their fans. I hate the Ravens. But, yeah, I mean, their real only true weakness is wide receiver. In my first mock draft, I had them taking N'Keal Harry. I have him falling here, too, out of Arizona State. I think he's the best wide receiver in this draft class. I think he's better than DK Metcalf as an overall receiver. I just think Metcalf's performance and physical physique at the combine will get him drafted higher. But, I mean, it pisses me off that Baltimore is going to get the best receiver in this pretty solid receiver draft class. Fuck the Ravens. And, yeah, fuck you, N'Keal Harry.
Wow.
So the Ravens in the first mock draft, I had them taking Riley Ridley, wide receiver out of Georgia. I have them sticking with the wide receiver, and I have them going with A.J. Brown, wide receiver out of Ole Miss.
Yeah.
Fun fact, he got drafted by the San Diego Padres in like the 13th round of the draft like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That is a fun fact.
Plays baseball at Ole Miss. That's something that a lot of kids at Ole Miss do. They play baseball there.
Yeah, it's probably why he runs so well. He's a great runner.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the 23rd pick, we've got the Texans. They definitely need some help on the offensive line protecting Deshaun Watson. I originally had them picking Chris Lindstrom, offensive line out of Boston College, but I switched that up. Andre Dillard made some really big progressions in the combine in meetings. I think that they like him a lot, and I think that Andre Dillard will be going from Washington State to the Texans.
Yeah, again, this is just like the Vikings pick. If they don't take an offensive lineman here, someone needs to get fired. I have them taking Dalton Risner out of Kansas State in my first mock draft. He's dropping here again, too. I think he could play tackle and guard. A day one starter for this terrible Texans offensive line. Keep Deshaun Watson upright. I understand that he's a mobile quarterback, but he's still a very good pocket passer as well. And when he's not getting murdered, that's how you avoid your franchise quarterback suffering a season-ending injury. So, yeah, Houston Texans take a guy who could start day one for them on their offensive line in Dalton Risner.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all you guys. They need to do a better job protecting Watson. In the first mock draft, I had them taking Greg Little out of Ole Miss, offensive lineman. Now I have them taking Caleb McGarry, offensive lineman out of Washington. And I'm actually shocked. I have a couple of first-round picks for Washington, so they did well by their football program this last season.
Washington always has solid people that come out of Definitely their DBs and offensive
They
line.
always have good corners. They always have good corners.
Always, every year. Moving on to the 24th pick. This is the Raiders pick from Chicago. Like we've been preaching all year, their defense need to be improved immensely. With that being said, I have them picking. Well, I originally had them picking Devin Bush, linebacker out of Michigan, but I had them going much earlier because he had quite a good pre-draft. Now I have them picking is Byron Murphy, cornerback out of Washington. He's that prime quarterback that comes from Washington that everyone's liking, and he'll definitely have an improvement on the Raiders.
Yeah,
I had the Raiders taking Montez Sweat in the first round. I don't think he falls here after his incredible combine. So with Marshawn Lynch retiring today and really them not having a starting running back on their roster other than Jalen Richard, I have them taking the only running back in this first round in Alabama's Josh Jacobs. I think Josh Jacobs could legitimately, he'll be their starter if they take him with one of these picks. I love the guy. He's gritty. He runs hard. He doesn't have a lot of mileage on him because Alabama always deploys a running back by committee of the backfield, but can catch the football, can run well, hits the holes. I think he could seriously be a top 5 running back in the league in 2 years. So yeah, Josh Jacobs out of Alabama at 24 to the Oakland Raiders.
So the Raiders got this pick from the Bears, and now they're trading it to the Cardinals for that number 1 pick. I have the Cardinals taking Devin White, linebacker out of LSU.
Yeah,
it's a big drop.
Yeah, it's a big drop. We'll see what happens. I mean, Devin Bush and Devin White are the 2 top linebackers in this draft, and they really could go. They could either easily flip flop, I think, and we'll see what happens there. Moving on to the 25th pick and getting close to the end, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. I originally had them drafting Ja'Kai Polite, edge rush out of Florida, but as Deegs mentioned earlier, he had an awful pre-draft, which dropped him out of the first round. I have them now drafting, I believe, the best safety in the draft, Juan Thornhill, strong safety out of Virginia.
Yeah, so I really like the guy that you had, PT, go to them, Thornhill. I think he's going to be a really good day 2 guy. Whatever team gets him is probably getting a day 1 starter. That being said, I had the Eagles taking Greg Little to bolster up that offensive line in the first mock draft. In the second mock draft, I'm going to have them addressing their safety. I've seen a lot of mock drafts having them go safety here just because their secondary isn't really the greatest. I have them going Deontay Thompson, Alabama. I don't think he's the best safety in this draft class. I think a guy that I have going in a few picks here is the best one, but he's an Alabama guy. That always gets you a boost, that repertoire of playing against high-level talent day in and day out. Did not have a really good combine, suffered an ankle injury at the end of the year, but I think Thompson comes in and he'll compete to be a starter for the Eagles. If not, he'll be a rotational package kind of safety.
Just like you just said, Deegs, Thompson, injured ankle, not that good of a combine, so I think that's going to make him fall out of the first round. And that's who I had the Eagles taking last than the first one. Now I have them taking Mack Wilson, linebacker out of Alabama.
Yeah, man, Alabama's a powerhouse for producing early draft picks on that defensive side. Moving to the 26th pick with the Indianapolis Colts. I originally had them drafting Nasir Adderley, safety out of Delaware, but I had them move into the defensive line with Jerry Tillery out of Notre Dame.
Yeah, I had the Raiders with their 3rd pick. Oh no, we're on the Colts, right? Yeah, my bad. Yeah. So I had the Colts taking Trayvon Mullen, linebacker out of Clemson. Now I have them taking Jeffrey Simmons out of Mississippi State. If you guys don't remember, Jeffrey Simmons tore his ACL working out before the combine. He would have probably been a locked and loaded top 10 pick. I think the Colts are a team that can afford to have a guy sit out for the majority of the year because they draft so well. Their defensive line was incredible last year, and you draft this guy and wait for him to come back in 2020, and that's just a nasty defensive front for a team that is going to be a Super Bowl contender this year, in my opinion. So, yeah, the Indianapolis Colts take Jeffrey Simmons out of Mississippi State.
Colts had an amazing defense last year, really helped them out, and I think they're going to make that great defense and make it a perfect one by adding a safety. I had them taking Nasir Adderley, safety from Delaware, in the first mock draft. I have them taking him again. Again, they needed a better safety. They're going to get it here, and it's just going to really improve that defense. That's already amazing.
Yeah, I could definitely see that for sure. But moving on to the 27th, we have the Raiders pick from Dallas. I originally had them going T.J. Hockenson, but T.J. Hockenson flew up the draft board this pre-draft. And now with Marshawn Lynch retiring, I have the Raiders drafting Josh Jacobs, running back out of Alabama.
Yeah, I had the Raiders taking Devin Bush at 27 in the first mock draft. If he's at 27, I will probably kill myself because that means Pittsburgh passed on him. I have them bolstering up their offensive line here, taking Cody Ford out of Oklahoma, big mauler type tackle. I think he's really good in run block and pass protection, which is what you need nowadays in the NFL. You can't just get away with being good at one or the other, especially with right tackles now with stud edge rushers like Khalil Mack and Von Miller coming off the right side. You have to be a versatile tackle. I think he is that. They kind of swung and missed on their first round pick last year, Colton Miller, a tackle out of UCLA. He was dog shit last year for them. So hopefully they can hit on this one. They have 3 first round picks, so one of them is bound to be a solid player for them. But yeah, Cody Ford out of Oklahoma is my pick here.
Yeah, so in my draft, the Raiders only have 2 picks in the first round. I had them taking Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. Now I have them taking Christian Wilkins, defensive lineman from Clemson.
Oh yeah, and I just want to make a comment. Deke said that if Devin, would you say Bush or fell all the way? I think if Devin, I think we'll see the 4 quarterbacks in the top 13 before we see Devin Bush fall all the way down there. I think he's going to be gone way before that.
Yeah, stupid idiot.
No. Deke's, that's what Deke said.
Shut the fuck up, Mahoney. You got 4 quarterbacks going in shitty draft class in the top 13.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to the 28th pick, San Diego Chargers. Oh, no. LA Chargers, I'm sorry. Right? LA Chargers? Is that what they are now?
They play in Los Angeles, yes.
Yes, okay. I originally had them, Jerry Tillery, the defensive tackle out of Notre Dame. I already had him gone, but now I have Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle out of Clemson.
Yeah, I had them taking Christian Wilkins out of Clemson in the first mock draft, which would have been a steal. I think they'll take a different guy here. If you guys remember the Chargers when they played against the Ravens in the playoff game, they had 7 defensive backs on the field at one time. So they would play 7 defensive backs. They played 3 of them at linebacker and obviously 4 in the secondary. I think you're going to see them doing that a lot more now. So I'll have them taking Rock Ya-Sin, safety / cornerback. He's a hybrid player. He can play both. Hell of an athlete. And I just think he slots in and fits well in those creative packages that the Chargers employ moving forward.
Yeah, so with the 28th pick for the Chargers, and the first one I had them taking Ja'Kai Polite out of Florida. I have them still addressing that edge problem that they have, and I have them taking Jalen Ferguson out of Louisiana Tech.
All right, and as we mentioned earlier, Frank Clark was traded to the Chiefs, and Seattle got to return their first-round draft pick. So the 29th pick is now the Seattle Seahawks pick. I have them going on defense again. They've lost a bunch of DBs, and I believe they're going to pick now Darnell Savage Jr., defensive back out of Maryland. Yes, Savage.
Yeah, I just want to preface something real quick going off Darnell Savage, whatever the fuck his name is.
Yeah, Darnell Savage Jr.
The Steelers had that guy in for a pre-draft visit, and if they draft him at 20, I will never do another podcast again. That being said, 29.
Why is that so? Can you please explain?
Why? I just think that if like I swear to God, if Devin Bush or Greedy Williams is there and they take a fucking safety, I will kill myself. Nasir Adderley is who I had going in the first one to the Chiefs. I think the Seahawks safeties are going to be just fine. So I have them going with Christian Wilkins out of Clemson. Again, if this guy was in another draft class. If he would have declared last year, probably a first-round pick, decided to come back and stay, still a first-round pick. If this was any other draft class, he's got to be at least a top 10 pick. He's a monster, dude. He's really good at stopping the run. This guy put on a crazy combine, ran like a 5.1 something 40-yard dash at 300 something pounds. That's pretty impressive. He's a good athlete. I think he can get after the quarterback a little bit too. So maybe not as impressive or not as good as Ed Oliver is, but again, a really solid defensive lineman for Seattle moving forward.
Yeah, Seattle has always been known for their great defenses. I have them adding to that great defense legacy. In the first one, I have them taking Trey Lamar, linebacker out of Clemson. Now I have them taking Vosean Joseph, linebacker out of Florida.
Interesting. All right, now we move on to the 30th pick. This is the Packers pick from the New Orleans Saints. I originally had the Packers choosing Noah Fant, but he's way gone by this time. I have them choosing Kelvin Harmon from NC State. This is just going to be another weapon for Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I had the Packers going Cody Ford in my first mock draft. I had them addressing offensive line again. They just had, I believe, one of their offensive linemen just retired, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
So I have them going Greg Little out of Ole Miss. Again, I think he could play tackle or guard. He could play right tackle for them in the first game. Obviously, left tackle's locked up with David Bakhtiari, but Greg Little, very highly touted offensive lineman. Some have him as the best offensive lineman in this entire class. I don't view him that highly, but again, another good player. You have to keep Rodgers upright. If you want him to have a good season and actually be able to be effective, he's got to stay healthy. So Greg Little, tackle out of Ole Miss, is my pick.
The Packers don't have a tight end right now. I mean, they do, but Jimmy Graham is not producing, like you said earlier, Deegs. So I have them addressing that and getting a tight end now in T.J. Hawkinson out of Iowa. I bet Connor's happy about that pick.
Yeah.
Mahoney, if 4 quarterbacks go in the top 13 and T.J. Hawkinson gets taken at pick number 30, I will give you $30.
I'll give all of our listeners $30.
Yeah, I will seriously give every single person that's ever listened to this podcast $30.
All right, good.
All right, moving on to our second to last pick, Los Angeles Rams. I originally had them picking Deontay Thompson. Everyone mentioned how he got hurt and didn't have the best of combines. Fuck. That hurt. All right.
You're going to have to edit that out.
Yeah. But I still have Deontay Thompson staying where he is. I think the Rams could definitely use him in that defensive backfield. I definitely feel like they could go with him.
Yeah, I had them taking Noah Fant in my first one. Obviously, he's gone here. I have them going with the safety, a guy who I think is the number 1 safety in this draft class, and Nasir Adderley out of Delaware, a small school prospect. Not the production that you necessarily want to see, but if you draft on production, you're kind of a fucking idiot. He has all the traits needed to play safety. He can play zone, he can play man, dime packages, anything you really need this guy to come in and play on. So yeah, Nasir Adderley out of Delaware is my pick.
I agree, Deegs. They're going to be taking a safety here. And I also agreed my first mock draft when I had them taking Mack Wilson out of Alabama. I now have them, again, going with Washington, Tyler Rapp, safety out of Washington.
Now, with our last pick, first round of the draft, the Patriots have the 32nd pick. Originally, I had them with Riley Ridley. I really like this guy. I think Tom Brady can definitely help this guy out. Everyone says that he's not as good as his brother Calvin Ridley, but I still feel like he has a lot of potential. And like I said, his quarterback's going to be Tom Brady, so that always helps.
Yeah, I could definitely see them taking a wide receiver here. I actually do have them taking a wide receiver here. Up until about 5 seconds ago, I had them taking Jerry Tillery. But, PT, you saying that you bringing up the whole Riley Ridley thing made me think that they could really use a receiver. So, in not typical Patriots fashion, I have them taking A.J. Brown, wide receiver out of Ole Miss. I think he's probably the second best receiver in this entire draft class. Like you guys said, he could play in the slot. Mahoney, you had him going earlier. He could play in the slot, could play on the outside. He's a hell of an athlete. I just think that with Josh Gordon pretty much not playing this year and them not really having a true number one option now that Rob Gronkowski's gone, I think A.J. Brown slots in as their day one starter. And I mean, his quarterback is Tom Brady, so I think he'll be just fine from a production standpoint.
Yeah, so just like you guys, I had them taking a wide receiver. Also, I had them taking Kelvin Harmon, wide receiver out of NC State, in the first mock draft. Now I have them taking a smaller school guy with Neil Harry, wide receiver out of Arizona State.
I like that. That concludes our 2019 NFL Mock Draft 2.0. We kind of got this out for you guys just in time. I don't know if this will be put out tomorrow morning, of the morning of, but just keep an eye out. There's going to be some interesting stuff going on. If you guys even want to send us your own mock drafts, we'd love to see them.
Oh, we would love to see those.
We'd love to
yes,
compare.
Definitely.
But we appreciate you guys listening to our mock drafts and keep us in touch with your own.
Yeah, I mean, let us know how you think we did. If you think we're stupid, definitely let Mahoney know that he's a dumbass for putting 4 quarterbacks in the top 13.
Let me know in the DMs.
Because I'm going to be letting him know how much of a dumbass he is for a while. But, I mean, yeah, this draft should be exciting, especially with how much talent there is on the defensive side of the football. We'll definitely have a podcast coming out, kind of recapping the draft, talking about some surprises, some steals, maybe giving some grades out, biggest wins, biggest disappointments, and whatnot of the first round. Obviously, there's more than one round in the NFL draft, but so yeah, make sure you just keep an eye out for that. Let us know what you guys think about our mock draft, and thank you as always for listening to the Bright Lights Podcast.
Thank you guys. Have a good one.
Perfect.